Hey Agile friends, welcome to a special series of episodes where we explore product development of a real-life application that enables remote pairing. In this first-person account of product development and remote work stories, we talk about Tuple, a remote pair programming app for macOS and Windows designed to make you feel like you're collaborating in person. If you want to know more, check out Tuple.app/Scrum. That's Tuple.app/Scrum. And let them know you heard about them here on the podcast. For me, what's cool about these stories is how they took the user's needs to heart and put on loads of developer-specific touches you just don't see with generic screen sharing tools. Tuple has been adopted by some very large companies and public sector, more on that in the episodes this week, that work even partially remote, partially or fully, of course. So check out the app at Tuple.app/Scrum and get their 50% off for the first 3 months of your subscription. That's 50% off for the first 3 months of your subscription. Let them know that you heard about Tuple here on the podcast by going to Tuple.app/Scrum. One more time, Tuple.app/Scrum. And now, on to the episode. Hello, everybody. Welcome to one more week of the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast. And joining us this week is Eli Goodman. Hey, Eli. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Vasco. Great to be here.
I should actually say welcome back to the show because Eli was here on Saturday. So go and check that bonus episode from a product person's perspective. Eli is the head of product at Tuple.app, a remote pairing app that caters to developers who want to have the best experience when pairing with their remote colleagues. And we're going to do a whole week on the product manager, head of product perspective, because that is Eli's perspective. So stay tuned this week for a perspective from the product side. For those of you who haven't heard Saturday's episode, Eli's been working with software for 17 years, probably more by the time we record this. He's been a full stack developer, engineering manager at both large and small companies, including companies that are probably very familiar to our audience, Etsy and Headspace. He made the transition to product management a few years ago, and he's now the head of product at Tuple. As I said, a remote pair programming service that is used by such companies as Figma, Shopify, and many other software product companies. So Eli, we're going to talk a lot about product and the role of the head of product or product manager, which you are also for the Tuple app. And we're going to explore a lot of lessons that you've learned throughout your career. And because today is Fail Monday, and Mondays are always Fail Mondays here on the podcast, we want to explore one of those stories because we want to get to know you there when you were learning the most. And this is the key thing here for this story of failure. So tell us a story when you did your best, but as it so often happens, the best just wasn't good enough at the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Lots of potential stories to pull from. But there's one that really has stuck in my mind as a place where, like you said, I tried my best and did not connect at all. So this is an interesting one because I definitely was operating in my capacity as the head of product for a previous organization, which again, I'm going to be a little bit circumspect about naming names here. But I was head of product, but also this one actually has to do with community, right? And I think this is interesting too, because I think it is natural to want to leverage your community of customers to both gain product insights, to create more engagement, and I think it's also not unreasonable to think of a community offering as being part and parcel of a product offering, right? I think this is a pattern that I've seen where organizations will, have a membership that both includes software and community that you can be a part of. And so I'll tell the particular story about this because I took a big swing here, had a big miss. So the way things got going at this organization is it was a small startup. Where again, I was leading the product organization, and we were actually in the midst of some kind of like 0 to 1 product discovery, right? We were going to be rolling out something brand new, and we had done the hard work of contacting folks who we thought were our ICPs, right? Folks we think would really benefit from the service that we're going to be building. So we had done a bunch of sessions that were really oriented around, like I said, product discovery, user research, trying to learn about their problems and the world that they lived in. But for various reasons, these ended up being group meetings, right? We were doing an iterative process where we were building stuff, putting it into users' hands, and then getting a bunch of them together to have these sort of semi-structured conversations. As a product discovery process, it was working pretty well, but we noticed this like interesting side effect, which is that the customers liked talking to each other. They would, part of the Zoom meeting would be us doing more pointed discovery and asking about their professional lives and their responses to the features and software we had built. But we do breakout rooms also, and they would end up talking about their craft, the things that they did. And we'd solicit feedback after the fact of how did you think that went, et cetera, et cetera. And many of the folks who were involved in this said, I really liked talking to my peers. I don't actually have a chance to do that often. And so my product brain is also going, aha, there's an opportunity there as well. There's obviously the responses to the software, but there's this other need that you're articulating. And it feels like we're also stumbling into a solution, right? And so I was ambitious. I was hungry. And I said, maybe this can be part of what we offer as well. Maybe this can be part of the offering, a membership that includes software and community. And again, with the benefits that we thought this could yield would be really salient in a product context. It can increase the stickiness of the software, continue to serve as a research community for us, and like I said, add value to the offering. So on paper, it looked great. So we took a big swing. Again, we were a small company without a lot of money. And I think one of the lessons that I've learned, and we'll talk about lessons, is we did not come at this perhaps in the most incremental way we could have. We staffed this up, right? We hired someone to serve as a community manager. We hired other folks to sort of serve as like kind of moderator types and liaisons with the group of customers. We spent some money on some nice software that could power the community. We did this whole big thing, rolled it out, nothing, crickets, empty space. And we tried a lot of stuff. We tried hosting events. We tried doing webinars. We tried incentivizing people to join the community. We tried all kinds of things to get people to participate. And it just did not take off. We spent so much time, so much money, and so much enthusiasm. I really thought this would work, and it just did not. So we eventually had to shutter it. And no one was sad when we did that because no one was really using it. So not a lot of tears shed on behalf of our users, but internally it was a really big blow and really took the wind out of our sails. And it was a tough failure to stomach.
So I don't want anyone to come out of this story thinking that enthusiasm and insights is the wrong lesson, because it isn't, right? So let's dive into that, Eli. So if you had to go through the whole story again, what would you do differently?
I think that there was one big miss that I personally took as a tactical takeaway, which is integration in the critical path with anything, right? This is something I think about a lot as a product person, right? Which is what is the typical user's critical path for the application? What is the thing that they're relying on the most, the burning need that this thing solves? Any feature that's not on the critical path, and I'm again talking about relatively focused experiences here. There are more sprawling application suites out there that I don't have experience with, but and I think this applies at Tuple as well, where we're trying to build a really focused product. And any feature that doesn't really connect on that critical path is in danger. That's a risk. This community was a sort of a separate offering, right? It was split from a UX perspective, was somewhere totally different. And it didn't really connect to your experience of using the software. This was, I think, one of the biggest contributors to the lack of engagement with this part of the product, which was that it was simply segmented. To actually get to it was a few clicks. It wasn't immediately obvious that it existed. It wasn't immediately obvious how it would make your experience better. And that's one of the things that I really take away as something that I try and avoid going forward, is tacking things on that don't feel directly connected to that critical path.
One of the things that you said there is actually quite important, because you also said, it wasn't easy to get to, it wasn't immediately obvious, it took a few clicks to get to it. And many people might get stuck in the idea that, hey, wait, if we just did the experience better, everything would work, right? Like the sunk cost fallacy, where we believe that the feature really is good. We just haven't made it perfect. Let's make it perfect. I'm sure it will fly, right? But it's also important to realize that, as you said, if it's not part of the critical path for the product's experience and it doesn't work at first, just stop it, because it's not part of that critical experience that you're trying to deliver, right?
I think that's exactly right. I mean, I think that there's a few other things that I would add on as adjuncts to that thought as well. I mean, one is community. These are more specific to community experiences for anyone out there who's thinking that a community offering or a more social-based offering might be important or might be impactful for their product. I think that even if something is in the critical path, there's a really tricky chicken and egg problem with community-based stuff specifically. Even if it was something that's like, oh, if there were 1,000 people contributing to this knowledge base, sharing their voices and experiences, whatever it was, or powering this platform, you have this cold start problem, which is a really common product problem. And so, again, I think that there is this really tricky dynamic of the amount of investment that you would have to make in order to get the critical mass of people. A, is a risk. You're assuming that even if you cross that chasm, it'll work. And B, you're requiring yourself to have this giant upfront cost to seed the community with people. And that's expensive. And again, as a product person, I see high upfront cost, red flags go off. So I think that's an additional risk there. And then the last thing I'll say, which is more to that point of like conceptually, is it even a good idea? I think one broader lesson that I've learned about online communities is I'm a little bit skeptical about them writ large at this point. I think that the idea of being in community is something that people are hungry for generally in our world, right? Especially in a post-pandemic world. Many community structures have been weakened. I know this is a little bit outside the purview of this podcast, but I think this is the thing that people are hungry for, is connection. And I don't know if digital communities are the answer to that problem. So even in a professional context, I think about my experiences of going to an in-person conference, so rich. I'm meeting people, I'm hearing talks, there's hallway conversations, all this stuff. Digital communities just have a lot of trouble replicating that. And I think that even if you had a perfect experience, integrated on the critical path, you had enough people, sometimes it just doesn't scratch the itch. So it's less of a lesson and more of a hunch, but that's something I took away from this experience, which is to just tread lightly in this whole area.
Yeah, absolutely. Be careful what you wish for, because you might just get it also, meaning that, of course, you then need to invest a lot in it, right? And that's the
true.
point that you made. It's not cheap to get a community off the ground. Excellent. Thank you for sharing that story with us, Eli.
Of course.
Hey there. We hope you loved the episode. And before you go, don't forget to thank the folks at Tuple.app for being so generous with their stories and for their support for the podcast. So visit their website at Tuple.app/Scrum, get their discount, and why not share them with your colleagues if you find that the app is useful. And remember, sharing is caring.